A king stood in front of his whole court. His chiefs were there, his advisors were there, his people were all around him, and he pointed at a girl from the village. Not a princess, not a rich woman, just a simple girl who sold ground nuts at the market every morning and sewed clothes by candlelight every night. He pointed at her and said, "In front of everyone, I choose her." And she looked back at him. This was a powerful king. He wore golden robes. Soldiers stood beside him. The whole palace was full of important people. But this girl looked straight at him, and she said no. She said no to the king. Not in a quiet voice, not in a whisper. She said it where everyone could hear. Her chin was up, her hands were calm, and that one small word fell into the room like a stone dropped into still water. The room went completely silent. The chiefs stopped moving. The advisors looked at each other. The women in the room covered their mouths with their hands. Even the birds in their cages stopped singing. A village girl had just said no to the king. Her name was Rose. She was 23 years old. Her dress was clean but old, the color of a sky after all the rain has fallen. Her feet were bare because no one had told her to prepare for a palace visit. She had walked 4 miles to get there. Her skin was warm and dark, like good soil after rain. And her eyes were the reason the king had stopped everything. They held something that none of the other women in that room had. Peace, confidence, a quiet strength that could not be bought. And she had used those eyes to look at King David and say no. The king did not shout. He did not move. He just stood very still. His hands closed slowly at his sides. This was not supposed to happen. Nothing about Rose was supposed to happen, but she was here, and he was here. And between them, though neither of them fully understood it yet, was a secret that had been hidden for 20 years, a secret that his own mother had buried with her own hands. CTA placement. Before we continue, please like this video and subscribe to our channel so you never miss a story. Now let us go back a little, so you can understand everything that brought this moment to life. King David was 30 years old. He had been king for 3 years, ever since his father, King Thomas, died quietly in his sleep one rainy morning. The doctors said it was his heart. His mother, Queen Mother Helen, wore black for exactly 40 days. Then she went straight back to business. Some people admired this. Others found it strange. David had taken over a strong kingdom, good land, good trade, a full treasury that his father had built carefully over many years. But he had also taken over his father's sadness, because King Thomas, for all his wealth, had always seemed to David like a man looking for something he had lost. David had grown up watching his father sit at windows for long periods, staring at nothing. He never understood it. Now that he wore the crown himself, he was beginning to wonder if it was something more than just the weight of being a king. David was not a hard man. He was firm when he needed to be firm. But the people who worked closely with him knew that he remembered the names of the kitchen workers. He asked after sick family members. He once stopped an important meeting because he saw a young child crying outside the palace gates and wanted to know why. His people respected him. In the villages, many of them quietly loved him. It was during one of his monthly visits to the outer villages that he first saw Rose. She was at the market, carrying a tray of groundnuts on her head. She held it easily, the way people do when they have carried heavy things since they were young. She was laughing at something an old woman beside her had said. It was a real laugh, open and free, the laugh of someone who was not trying to impress anyone. When she noticed the king's group coming toward her, she did not run or panic like the other sellers around her. She just waited. Her eyes were curious. Her back was straight. David kept walking, but he did not stop thinking about those eyes. Rose lived in a small two-room house at the edge of the village with her grandmother, Grandma Ada. Grandma Ada was 68 years old. Her legs had been swollen and painful for years from illness, and she could only walk a few slow steps. Rose woke up before sunrise every day to cook. She cleaned the house. She walked to the market. She came home. Then she sat by the light of a small lamp and sewed the clothes that neighbors paid her coins to fix. On Sundays, she went to the river to wash their things. Sometimes, when she thought no one could see her, She would sit on the riverbank and rest for a few minutes, feet in the cool water, eyes closed, just breathing. She never complained about her life. This was not because she did not notice how hard it was. She noticed, she simply believed, deep in her heart, that a person's worth is not decided by how much they own. It is decided by how they carry themselves. She had never known her mother. Grandma Retta had raised her from a baby. Whenever Rose asked about her mother, something difficult would move across the old woman's face, a mix of sadness and love, and something that looked like fear. Grandma Ida would say, "Only, your mother was the most beautiful, most kind woman I ever knew. God took her too soon." Then she would change the subject. Rose had learned, over many years, not to push, but she had never stopped wondering. There was always something behind her grandmother's silence, something that felt less like grief and more like she was trying to keep Rose safe from a truth she was not yet ready to know. Rose did not understand yet what that truth was. The letter came on a Tuesday. A palace messenger arrived at their small house. His uniform was perfect. His face showed nothing. He handed Rose a sealed letter with the royal stamp on it. Grandma Retta, sitting in her chair by the window, saw that stamp and went very still. Her hands, which were resting in her lap, pressed tightly together. "What does it say?" she asked. Her voice was soft in a way it did not usually sound. "They want me at the palace," Rose said slowly, reading the letter. "For the choosing ceremony." She looked up. "Grandmother, they are calling me to the choosing ceremony." The choosing ceremony was an old tradition in the kingdom. Queen Mother Helen had brought it back after King David became king. Once a year, young women from all across the kingdom were invited to the palace for a great celebration. If the king wished, he would choose a woman from among them to begin a courtship. Most young women considered this the greatest chance of their lives. Grandma Lada did not speak for a long moment. Tins sighed very carefully. "You do not have to go." "Of course I will go," Rose said, folding the letter. "Grandmother, the travel gift money alone will help us this month." "Rose," Grandma Ida's voice changed. Low, urgent. "Listen to me. That family." But at that moment, a neighbor called from outside the door, and everything was interrupted. Grandma Ida turned her face back to the window. She said nothing more, and whatever she had been about to tell, Rose stayed locked inside her. Rose went to the palace. She wore her best dress. She walked the 4 miles alone because the cart she had arranged broke down. By the time she arrived, her feet ached, and the bottom of her dress was dusty from the road. The other women in the great hall were beautiful in bright silks and colorful beads. Rose stood near the back and watched. Her face was calm. Calm in the way that comes from having lived through many hard days. Then the king walked in. He looked around the room. He looked past the silk dresses, past the beads, past the perfume and the practiced smiles. His eyes found Rose at the back, dusty dress, bare feet, alone, and something in his face changed. He walked toward her. The crowd moved out of his way. He stopped in front of her and said, quietly enough for only her to hear, "I have been thinking about your eyes for 3 weeks." Then he stepped back. He turned to face the whole room. He raised his voice and said, clearly, in front of everyone, "I have made my choice. I choose this woman." The room exploded. Clapping, gasps, a wave of surprise moving through the crowd, and Rose looked at the king. She did not clap. She did not look away. She stood very still, and something moved inside those eyes of hers. Not excitement, not pride, not happiness, something that looked more like sadness. And she said, "I am sorry, Your Majesty. I cannot accept." Time stopped. The world stopped. Everything stopped. King David stared at her. "I beg your pardon. I cannot accept your choosing." Her voice was steady, even kind, but completely firm. "I mean no disrespect to you, but I cannot become part of this family." People gasped out loud. Chiefs leaned forward. Someone dropped a cup. The clapping had completely died. The silence was so total that the sound of rain beginning on the palace roof felt very loud. David stepped closer. His voice dropped to a whisper. "Tell me why." And Rose leaned forward slightly and said 6 quiet words. Only for him, 6 words that pulled all the color from his face. He stepped back. His face showed nothing. He ended the ceremony. He told the room it was finished, and as the guards began moving, guests toward the exit, he stood alone in the center of that great hall, with 6 words going around and around in his head, like a bell that would not stop ringing. Those words were, "Ask your mother what she did." David did not sleep that night. He lay on his bed and stared at the ceiling, and turned those 6 words over and over in his mind. "Ask your mother what she did." He told himself it was nothing. He told himself the girl was confused, or that someone had told her to say it. He told himself many things, but morning came, and those words were still there. Before the sun was fully up, he was already at his desk, sending for his most trusted helper, a careful, quiet man named James, who had worked at the palace for 15 years. "I need everything," David said, "about a village girl named Rose. Her family, where she came from, everything." James came back by midday. The information was thin. Rose was 23 years old. Her grandmother, Grandma Ada, had raised her from a baby. Her mother's name was listed in the village records as Mary Obie. Father, unknown. Mother, dead. She had died 23 years ago, 1 month after Rose was born. David read the name again, Mary Obie. Something about it pulled at the back of his memory, like a name he had heard before, in a different time, in a different room. He went to the palace library. It was a large, quiet room that smelled of old paper and wood. David walked slowly through the rows of shelves, pulling old record books from the years of his father's rule. He was not completely sure what he was looking for. He told himself he was just looking for the name. He found it in a book from 30 years ago. Mary Obie, listed as a Pelasgus. She had stayed for 7 months. The reason given was personal guests of His Majesty King Thomas. David sat down on the library floor with the book open in his hands. The stone floor was cold through his robes. The dust in the room settled quietly around him. Personal guest, 7 months. He pulled more books, more records. He found a section where 6 months of records had been removed, not torn, but cut cleanly with something sharp, as if someone had done it carefully and on purpose. Then, in an accounts book from 24 years ago, he found one small line in handwriting he did not recognize. Payment to Dr. S. for services. Village arranged. Mater, closed mater, closed. His hands were not completely steady when he put the book down. He found Dr. Samuel 3 days later. The old man was 81 now, living in a small, warm house 40 miles from the capital. He had left medicine many years ago. His hands shook with age. His eyes were weak. But when David arrived without warning at his door, the old doctor's face did something very specific. It went white, and he stepped back, and he said, in a voice barely above a whisper, "I always knew this day would come." David sat across from him in a small room that smelled of cinnamon and old books. "Tell me about Mary," David said. The old doctor closed his eyes. When he opened them, there was something there that looked like relief. The relief of a man who has been carrying a very heavy thing for a very long time, and has finally been allowed to put it down. "Your father," the doctor began slowly, "loved her. I want you to understand that first. He truly loved her. She was a village teacher's daughter. Educated, kind, beautiful inside and out. They met during one of your father's village visits, before your mother had full control of the palace. He brought her to stay at the palace, quietly, for 7 months. And she loved him too. She became pregnant with his child." David said nothing. Outside, rain had started falling, soft and steady. "Your mother found out," the doctor continued. "Queen Mother Helen. She was not yet Queen Mother at that time, but she was already a very powerful woman who understood exactly what Mary's child would mean. A first child, born before you, a claim to the throne." He paused. "She came to me privately. She told me to send Mary away from the palace immediately, to give her money, to move her far enough away that your father could not easily find her. And she told me," the old man's voice went very quiet, "she told me to make sure the child did not survive." The room was completely still. "I refuse that last part," the doctor said, and his voice was the voice of a man defending the one good thing he had done in a life full of compromises. "I told her I would not do it. We argued. In the end, Mary was sent away with enough money to live on wheat, her baby, in a village far from the capital. She was told your father had agreed to end all contact with her. She was told he stopped. She was told many lies, and she was very young. And she was alone, and her heart was completely broken. She died 6 weeks after the baby was born. The doctors said it was fever, but those who knew her understood what really happened. She had given up on living." David sat with this for a long time. The clock on the wall ticked. The rain fell outside. The cinnamon smell in the small room felt suddenly too sweet. He thought about his father at the windows, those long, quiet silences, that lost look on a face that was always searching for something. His father had never known. He had been told Mary chose to leave, that she wanted no contact. He had lived 30 years carrying a grief he could not explain, because the woman he loved had disappeared, and he was never told the real reason why. And Rose, with her strong, peaceful eyes and her straight back, was his father's daughter. His sister. This truth did not hit him like a wave. It hit him like the moment after a wave when the water has passed and everything around you has been moved, and the world looks completely different from how it looked before. He drove back to the capital, Idrob, Fas. By the time the palace gates appeared in front of him, he had made a decision, and that decision sat in his chest like iron, heavy and certain and impossible to move. He went to Rose first. He found her at the market, early in the morning, her tray on her head, moving between the sellers. He came alone, no guards, plain clothes. When she saw him walking toward her, her eyes went wide for just a moment, then settled. "You looked into it," she said. It was not a question. "Sit with me," he said. They sat on a low wall at the edge of the market. Around them, the normal world continued, mothers with babies, sellers calling out prices, the smell of frying food and morning dust. "How long have you known?" he asked. "Since I was 17, Rose said quietly. "Grandma Ada told me on a night, when she thought she was going to die, she had a very bad fever. She thought it was her last night. She told me everything she knew about my mother, about the palace, about the king." She looked down at her hands. "She got better, and I carried the secret alone. Why didn't you? What would I have done?" Her voice was gentle but clear. "Go to the palace gates and say, 'My dead mother was sent away by the Queen Mother?' They would have laughed at me. Or worse, c'est possible." When the letter came for the ceremony, I almost did not go. But Grandma Rita said, "Go." She said God organizes things in his own time. She said truth always finds its way out. A small, quiet smile. She did not expect me to say no to a king in front of his whole court. "But you did," David said. "I did," Rose said simply, "because becoming your wife without you knowing the truth would have been just another buried thing. And I am tired of buried things." He looked at her for a long time. She let him look. "You are my sister," he said. His voice was full. Full in the way voices get when they are carrying more than they were built to hold. Rose nodded. Her eyes were bright. "Yes," she said softly. "I am." He did not go to his mother that same day. He spent 1 week gathering everything. James helped him find records, talk to witnesses, and track down the people who had been alive and present in those rooms 30 years ago. An old palace worker who had known Mary, a retired cook who had prepared her meals during her 7 months in residence, a village elder who clearly remembered the young woman who arrived in their village with a newborn baby and a broken heart, and who never fully recovered from either. By the time David walked into his mother's private room, the file in his hand was thick, and he was very calm. He had discovered something about himself that week, that his deepest anger did not look like heat. It looked like perfect stillness. Queen Mother Helen was 62 years old. She was an impressive woman in the way that cold, beautiful things are impressive. Marble floors, tall mountains, things that fill you with respect but never with warmth. She was at her writing desk when David entered. She did not look up right away. This was her habit. She liked to make people wait, even kings. When she finally looked up and saw his face, something moved in hers. Just a small flicker. "You went to see that girl," she said. Her voice was smooth and controlled. "I went to see my sister," David said. The smooth look on her face cracked only a little. But David had been studying this face his entire life, and he saw it. "Sit down, David. You are emotional. You are not thinking clearly. I found the record book." He put the thick file on her desk. "I found Dr. Samuel. I found 3 witnesses who remembered Mary Obie. I found the payment records." He did not sit. He stood very still. "I want you to tell me yourself. I want to hear it from your own mouth." Helen looked at the file. She did not open it. Her hands stayed folded in her lap. "Everything I did," she said after a long silence. "I did for this family. Tell me what you did." She lifted her chin. "Your father was a king. He was about to make a terrible mistake. A village girl with no family name, no royal background, no political value. He was going to put her above everything. Above the plans I had worked years to build. Above you. You were already born. You were the crown prince. Her child," she paused, choosing her words. "Her child's presence would have made everything difficult." "Her child's presence," David repeated quietly. "Rose. Her name is Rose." "I made a decision," Helen said. Her voice was firm. The voice of a woman who had never apologized for anything in 62 years. "I protected this throne. I protected you. You killed her mother." His voice was still very quiet. "Mary died of a broken heart, because you told her the man she loved had abandoned her. She was alone in a strange village, with a newborn baby, and no one who cared for her. And you had taken everything from her. She died because of what you did. She was not strong enough. She was 20 years old." The stillness in David finally broke, just to the edges, just enough to show what was burning beneath. "She was 20 years old, and she loved my father, and she carried his child, and you destroyed her. You let my father spend 30 years, not knowing why the woman he loved had disappeared, and you let Rose spend 23 years living in poverty, carrying a secret she never should have had to carry." Helen opened her mouth. "I am not finished," David said. She closed. "Italiano, you have sat in this palace," he said, and now his voice had the quality of something final, something already decided, "as though you are the keeper of everything good in this kingdom. You have called yourself its protector my whole life. But what you protected was not this family. What you protected was your own power, your own position, your own fear of a young woman who had done nothing to you, nothing, except exist and be loved." Friends, if this story is moving your heart, please subscribe to our channel now and click the bell, because the ending of this story will change how you see everything. He placed his hands flat on her desk and looked directly into her eyes. "Rose is my father's daughter," he said. "She is a princess of this kingdom by blood, and you are going to face what you have done." For the first time in David's memory, his mother had nothing to say. The council met on a Thursday, in the great hall of the palace. The smell of old wood and candle wax filled the air. David had called the senior chiefs, the royal record-keeper, and without explaining why beforehand, Rose herself. She arrived in a clean dress she had borrowed from a neighbor. She held her grandmother's old Bible in both hands. Her eyes took in the great hall around her, all its size and weight and history, with that same calm that looked to strangers like emptiness, but was in fact a very deep kind of strength. David stood before the council and told the truth. All of it, without making it bigger than it was. Without cruelty, just the clear, simple facts of what had been done, who had done it, and what it had cost. A young woman who loved a king and was sent away with lies, and a king who spent the rest of his life sitting at windows looking for something he could not find. The chiefs listened without speaking. The record-keeper's pen moved steadily. The candles burned. When David finished, he turned to Rose. She walked forward. She stood in the center of the great hall, the very same hall where she had said no to a king. She lifted her chin. She spoke in a voice that was not loud, but that filled the room completely. I did not come here for revenge. I came here because the truth is owed to my mother's memory. She was Mariobi. She was good. She was kind. She was loved. That is all I want history to say about her. One of the oldest chiefs in the room, a man of 70 who had served David's father for many years, slowly stood up from his seat. He looked at Rose for a long, quiet moment. Then he pressed one hand to his heart and bowed his head. He did not say a single word, but that one quiet act from that old man carried more meaning than any speech. One by one, the others rose. One by one, they bowed. 2 days later, Queen Mother Helen was called before the council. The official findings were read to her clearly. Misuse of royal power, deliberate removal of royal records, and actions that directly led to the death of Mariobi and the loss of a royal child's birthright. She listened with no expression on her face. When they finished, she said in a flat voice, "I understand." She was not put in prison. She was old, but she was removed from all positions of power and moved to the smaller royal home on the eastern side of the kingdom. The palace staff, who had been afraid of her for many years, breathed more freely than they had in a long time. And Rose was officially recognized by the council as the daughter of King Thomas. They brought her a dress of deep green silk, the color of the kingdom's royal cloth. She looked at it for a long time. Then she looked at David. And David, who had spent a week learning, he had a sister he never knew, who had watched his father's search windows for 30 years, who had sat in an old doctor's small room and heard the story of a life that was buried, said, "You don't have to wear it if you don't want to." And Rose laughed, the same wide, open, unguarded laugh he had seen at the market. She wore the dress. 6 months passed. Rose and Grandma Ada moved out of the small two-room house at the edge of the village. Their new home was not the palace. Rose had been offered rooms there, and she accepted one, but she also found a warm, white house near the market, close to the people she had always known. From Grandma Ada's new window, you could see the road and the people coming and going every day. The old woman said this was better than any medicine. Rose arranged for good doctors to treat Grandma Ada's swollen legs. By the 3rd month, the old woman was walking, slowly, with a cane, but walking. She walked to the window. She walked to the door. One morning, she walked all the way to the edge of the courtyard. She stood in the early morning sun with her face lifted up. She did not say anything. She just breathed. Rose did not stop working. But her work changed. David gave her an official role in the kingdom, an advisor for village communities, a position that gave her the power to direct help to the schools and markets of the outer villages. She knew those roads well. She knew those people. She knew what they needed because she had been one of them. And she never forgot that. She never wanted to forget it. The choosing ceremony was quietly ended. Queen Mother Helen lived in her house on the eastern side of the kingdom. She received no visitors unless she asked for them. David visited her once, 3 months after everything had happened. He found her in her garden, sitting in the late afternoon sun, her hands in her lap. They did not talk much, but before he left, she said in a voice that had lost all of its old hardness, "Your father would have loved her." David stood still with that for a moment. Then he said, "Yes, he would have." He thought about his father often now, not with the old sadness, the shapeless sorrow of losing someone. He thought about him differently, as a man who had loved deeply, been lied to, and spent the rest of his life searching for something he could not name. If the truth had been free to breathe, David taught how different everything would have been. Not easier, perhaps, but true, and truth, he had learned, is always kinder in the end than even the most careful lie. Rose made sure her mother's name was kept alive. She built a small school in the village where Mariobi had lived and died. Above the front door of that school, she had 4 simple words carved into the wood. Not a long story, not a palace declaration, just a name. Mary. A name given back to the open air, a name that children would say out loud every morning when they arrived to learn. And in that, a young woman who had died too young and too alone was given back what powerful people had taken from her. She was remembered. She was real. She was loved. The king who had everything, a crown, a palace, a kingdom, finally understood what everything truly meant. It was not the gold. It was not the power. It was not the ceremony. It was the truth, spoken clearly, even when the whole room was listening, even when it was difficult, even when you had to be a village girl in a borrowed dress with bare dusty feet, standing in a palace full of silk. It was the courage to say no to what was offered, and yes to what was true. Thank you, dear friends, for sitting with us through this story. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe to our channel and click the bell so you never miss a story. Share it with someone who needs to hear it today. And when you are ready, our next story is right here waiting for you. We are